You think life today is hard? Imagine waking up in 1750s London, where your breakfast includes beer, your children work 12-hour shifts, and taking a bath could literally kill you according to doctors. Sound insane? Wait until you hear what people did every single day just to survive. This isn't fiction. These were the brutal realities that shaped an entire century. And somehow, millions of people lived through this. Let's start with something shocking. In 18th century Europe, children as young as 4 years old drank beer for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But before you judge, here's why. The water could kill you faster than the alcohol. In cities like London and Paris, rivers were open sewers filled with human waste, dead animals, and industrial runoff. The Thames River in London was so contaminated that a doctor in 1749 described it as a mixture of all colors and consistencies. Well, water wasn't much better. Fecal matter regularly seeped into wells, spreading typhoid and cholera. So, what did people do? They turned to small beer. A weak beer with only 2 to 3% alcohol content? The brewing process involved boiling water, which killed deadly bacteria like E. coli and cholera. Historical records from Norwich show that workers received 8 pints of small beer per day as part of their wages. Even children in workhouses were given beer rations. A 1758 record from a London parish shows children aged 5 to 10 receiving 2 pints daily. This wasn't about getting drunk, it was about survival. Small beer provided calories, hydration, and most importantly, it wouldn't give you dysentery. Families brewed beer weekly like we buy groceries today, and a household of 5 could go through 40 to 50 gallons per week. The alternative was risking death from contaminated water. Now, here's something that'll make you appreciate your shower. Most people in 18th century Europe bathed maybe once or twice a year, and doctors actually recommended this. Why? Medical theory at the time believed that bathing opened your pores, allowing diseases to enter your body. A 1700 medical text by Dr. Simon Andre Tissot warned that frequent bathing weakens the body and invites illness. King Louis XIV of France reportedly bathed only 3 times in his entire life, and he was royalty. Instead of bathing, people used dry rubbing with cloth to remove dirt. They changed their linen undergarments more frequently, maybe once a week if they could afford it, and the linen was supposed to absorb sweat and oils. Wealthy people used perfumes and powders to mask body odor, while the poor just smelled. Public bathhouses did exist in some cities, but they were rare and often associated with prostitution, making them socially unacceptable. A census from 1750s, Paris showed only 12 public baths, serving a population of over 600,000 people. The result? Body lice were so common that special flea traps, small boxes worn around the neck filled with blood or honey, were sold to catch the parasites. Everyone had them, from peasants to nobles. Here's something even more disturbing. Childhood as we know it didn't exist. In 1788, a British parliamentary survey found that children as young as 4 years old worked in textile mills for 12 to 14 hours per day. In coal mines, children aged 5 to 7 were used as trappers, sitting alone in complete darkness for entire shifts, opening and closing ventilation doors. Some worked underground for 16 hours straight. The London Foundling Hospital records from 1756 show that orphan children were apprenticed out at age 4, often to chimney sweeps, one of the deadliest professions. These children climbed inside hot chimneys, many dying from burns, falls, or suffocation. A chimney sweep named David Porter testified in 1788 that he'd lost 3 apprentices under age 8 to chimney accidents in a single year. Education, only for the wealthy. A 1750 survey of Manchester showed that less than 30% of children could read, and most of those were from affluent families. Poor children learned trades by doing, not through formal schooling. By age 7, most working class children were already contributing to household income. Let me paint you another picture of 18th century life. Privacy didn't exist. Most poor families, and we're talking about 80% of the population, lived in single room dwellings. Records from 1780s Edinburgh show families of 8 to 10 people sharing one room measuring 12 by 15 feet. Everyone slept in the same bed or on straw mattresses on the floor, huddled together for warmth. Even in wealthier homes, servants often slept in the same room as their employers or in hallways. The concept of a private bedroom was a luxury only the very rich could afford. Samuel Pepys, a wealthy London administrator, wrote in his diary in the 1660s about sharing a bed with male guests as a normal practice that continued well into the 18th century. This meant everyone knew everything about each other's lives: births, deaths, illnesses, intimate moments. There were no secrets, no personal space, and definitely no alone time. Now let's talk about food, or rather, the lack of it. For most people, meat was eaten maybe once a month, if that. A 1795 study of English laborers' diets showed that the average worker consumed only 4 to 6 pounds of meat per year. Compare that to today's average of 220 pounds per year in developed countries. The diet was brutally simple: bread, porridge, and whatever vegetables were in season. In rural France, a typical peasant meal consisted of dark bread made from rye or barley, onion soup, and occasionally cheese. Historical accounts describe bread so hard it had to be soaked in water or beer to be edible. The hungry months of April and May, before new crops arrived, were times of near starvation. Parish records from 1740s rural England show death rates increased by 40% during these months. People ate grass, tree bark, and even clay mixed with flour to fill their stomachs. Salt was used so heavily to preserve food that it caused widespread health problems. Salted fish, salted meat, salted vegetables. Everything was preserved in salt, leading to high blood pressure and kidney disease. A preserved herring could contain as much salt as 20 modern servings. And if you got sick or injured, you were basically on your own. Doctors practiced humoral theory, the belief that illness came from imbalanced body fluids. The solution? Bloodletting. Records from 1780s. French hospitals show patients being drained of up to 40 ounces of blood, that's more than 3 soda cans, to treat everything from headaches to broken bones. Anesthesia didn't exist. Surgical procedures were done while patients were awake and fully conscious. A leg amputation in 1750 took about 2 to 3 minutes. Surgeons prided themselves on speed because patients often died from shock. Survival rates for major surgery were around 30%. Even simple injuries could be fatal. A cut that got infected could lead to gangrene and death. Tooth decay was universal, and dentists, often just blacksmiths or barbers, would yank out infected teeth with pliers and no pain relief. King Louis XV of France lost most of his teeth by age 40, despite having access to the best medical care available. People lived with constant pain, arthritis, dental pain, chronic infections, because there was nothing else they could do. Opium was available but expensive, reserved mostly for the wealthy. Finally, let's talk about time and travel, or how limited life really was. Most people never traveled more than 10 miles from their birthplace in their entire lives. A 1782 survey of rural French villagers found that 70% had never visited the nearest city, despite it being only 15 miles away. Why? Travel was slow, expensive, and dangerous. A journey from London to Edinburgh, about 400 miles, took 10 to 12 days by stagecoach and cost more than a month's wages for a laborer. Roads were unpaved dirt paths that turned into impassable mud and rain. Time itself was measured differently. Mechanical clocks were rare and expensive. A 1760 inventory of a typical English village with 200 families showed only 3 households owned clocks. People told time by church bells, the position of the sun, and the rhythm of agricultural seasons. Work didn't start at 9 a.m. It started at sunrise. Dinner wasn't at 6 p.m. It was when the work was done. The concept of exact time was irrelevant to most people. So there you have it. Life in 18th century Europe meant drinking beer to avoid death, bathing once a year, working from age 4, living with no privacy, eating almost no meat, surviving constant pain without medical care, and never leaving your village. These weren't extraordinary hardships. This was just normal life for millions of people. Next time you turn on a faucet, take a hot shower, or grab food from your fridge, remember, just 250 years ago, all of that would have seemed like magic. Our everyday conveniences are built on centuries of progress that most people couldn't even imagine.